I've been working with a growing number of engineering teams at Twitter over the past 6 or 8 months now. We're trying to do a transformation at scale from basically an ad hoc engineering organisation to one that is agile. We certainly have pockets of agile, but we don't have it throughout our whole business. So when we look at our engineering organisation, we think of platform engineering, infrastructure operations, and applications engineering. You can imagine that applications engineering is iOS devices, platform engineering is a lot of the back-end underlying services, and infrastructure is things in the data center. And so we have a number of teams, and we have a problem with coordination, or we had a problem, I should say, with coordination and collaboration across all these teams. So does anyone here have a problem with coordination and collaboration across your company? Okay, there's a few hands. Does anyone here, keep your hands up, do you do goals or goal setting, anything like that for your company? Okay, so less people, okay. So at Twitter, we don't do goals, we do gulls, right? Everything at Twitter is named after a bird. Honestly, it's amazing how many different types of birds there are, because from meeting rooms to services that we run to initiatives that span the whole engineering organisation, the whole company, everything's named after a bird. And our approach to goals is called gulls. And our approach, gulls, is actually based upon something that Andy Grove of Intel wrote about many years ago, and that's objectives, key results. The objectives, key results approach is also in use at Google, for instance, and it's just it's a framework for setting goals. You know, if anyone here is familiar with Salesforce, you may know that Salesforce uses an approach called V2MOM. The Atlassian process is called the VTFM, and so essentially they're these frameworks to help the company work together, collaborate together, and plan what the company's going to do, and also track and measure the company's progress towards that. So at Twitter we have these OKRs, these objectives and key results. And for the longest time, we used a whole lot of tools that were all over the place. There was a ton of stuff in email. This is actually an example from Google Docs, and protecting the innocent here with whiteout, so I apologize. But essentially what you see here is you see a quarterly key result. And so in our world, the objective is something that spans a number of quarters. An objective, for instance, one of the teams developer productivity. They want to make Twitter engineering the happiest place in the world, right? Better than Disneyland, right? That's an objective that lasts forever, but the key result is something that lasts for a quarter. In addition to the key result, teams also had their backlog. So you can imagine, what is our ordered backlog of things that we are actually working on as a team? So if we look at this particular slide came out of an event that we do on a weekly basis called a launch meeting. There's a number of different teams that present at this launch meeting, and they're all presenting their key results and how they're tracking on their key results, and they're presenting their backlog plan and how they're tracking against this. And because this data was all unstructured, it was in Google Docs, it was in email, it was written on literally post-it notes all over the place. It was unstructured, it was inconsistent, and it was really hard to get good visibility into all of these engineering teams. So we had team name, the quarterly key results. We had the blockers. Was your team blocked by another team? We had the backlog plan. You can see here that if it's done, it's green. We have the version, different versions of separate initiatives or items on the backlog. And we also had things like add. So if partway through the quarter and something came up, it would be listed as add on that backlog. And so it was terribly difficult to track, and we actually struggled as a company to get the insight that we needed. So the result of this was, it was a total fail, essentially. If you're not familiar, this is our fail whale. The fail whale actually lived on Twitter's homepage if there was an error and outage for a number of months. For a number of years, in fact. We finally got rid of it and we said we've killed the whale in April this year. And actually at the same time in April, we said we've killed this problem with collaboration and communication across the company because we brought in Jira and Confluence, Jira Agile, and we actually, for the first time, had structure and consistency around our goals process. Just want to pause here for a second. Is there anyone here, who here has upgraded Jira Confluence, their versions, in the last 3 months? Okay, so there's a few of you that haven't. Like, we are keeping fairly close to the latest releases of Jira Confluence, Jira Agile, and all the Atlassian tools that we use. I have to say that I'm just overwhelmed by the amount of changes that Ryan has just gone through with Confluence and team calendars. And there's a ton of stuff in there that we can take advantage of today. So if there's any advice that I give to you, it's like stay up or stay fairly relevant or recent with the Jira, the Confluence, the Jira Agile, things like that. Part of the reason that Twitter had used things like email, Google Docs, was that our Confluence instance hadn't been upgraded in about three and a half years. And so if you can picture in your mind, if you've been an Atlassian customer for a long time, think back to Confluence 3.0. Okay, I get a few nods in the audience. Yeah, that's where we were. And so actually upgrading to the latest version of these products has opened up a whole new world in the past couple of months. So it's been a big improvement. You should do it too. Anyway, for our goals, in Jira we have a combination of custom fields. We have custom workflows around epics, which are in Jira Agile, and we have a special dependency management piece. We use Jira Agile for the epics, of course, but also for ordering our epics. So what are the things that we're working on? What is our most important piece? And Confluence is where we actually visualize all this. So in Confluence, you can imagine that for different audiences, different things make sense. For the engineering team, they live in Jira Agile, right? That's where they spend their time. For the engineering manager, they spend a lot of time in Jira in the issue navigator. But for the engineering directors, for our executives, the way that they consume this information is using Confluence, and I'll actually walk through this now. So this is Jira Agile. Each engineering team has their own board. So this is one particular board. This is a Scrum board. In fact, all of our Kanban teams, they also have Scrum boards. Excuse the interruption. That's the fail whale right here.
No, it's good. We're good.
Awesome. So all of our teams, whether they're Scrum or Kanban teams, they all have a Scrum board in Jira Agile, and that's so that they've got access to the epic piece. And so each of these epics have a specialized workflow. They have specialized custom fields specific to our goals. And what we ask the teams to do is to order these, right? This is number one. This is the most important thing, right down to the least important thing. So if anything's going to drop from your key results for this quarter, it should be this one at the bottom of the list, and we expect you to deliver from the top down. Just to give you an idea of what this looks like for each of these epics in Jira, of course they're an issue type epic. You have the summary and the epic name. They're really one in the same for us. It's just that the epic name is the shortened, condensed version that we can see easily on the backlog. We have this special field here, the key result, and that's really important because that ties back to our objectives and our key results. This is a key result that we're going to deliver in this quarter. And because this is a key result that we're going to deliver in this quarter, we're actually using fixed versions, 2013-Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4, and so on. We have a specialized workflow, as I said, and the assignee is generally the engineering manager that is responsible for the delivery of this epic. They have the team that's responsible for that. So that's all well and good for the engineering teams, the engineering manager, etc. But then we come around to the Confluence piece for visualizing this across the whole organization. So we have a Confluence page. In this case, it's called goals, and it's goals for this particular team. In this case, developer productivity. You can see at the top here, this team only has one objective. It's this objective that lasts a long time. Some teams do have a number of objectives. Below that, we have a Jira Issues macro. And this Jira Issues macro is what goes out, what Ryan pointed out earlier is really cool. It's going to make our life a lot easier. But it's that Jira Issues macro that goes out and pulls the relevant issues. So issue type equals epic. Fix version equals Q3 2013. What fields do we display? We display the key result, the summary, the status. So that's really important for us. Just to give you an idea of how we actually structure these pages, we're not using any of the fancy layouts at this point, but we are using a third-party, I apologize, we're using an Atlassian Labs add-on called the presentation macro. It's available on the marketplace. And so you've basically got table of contents, presentation macro, and then within the presentation macro you have the headlines for each of the teams and a Jira Issues macro within that. One thing to note, the presentation macro, it changes slides. It actually allows you to do like a PowerPoint slide or like a slide deck like this in Confluence, and it changes slides using the horizontal rule, again available in the Confluence wiki markup editor, or Confluence editor. So what it looks like at the end of the day is a high contrast presentation slide. You can imagine it's full screen, and it's got that summary, the key result, and the status. This particular bit on the status here, we actually have some color around that. If this particular key result has been delivered or achieved, it'll actually turn green. If it's been cancelled for any reason, it'll turn red. So it's that quick visual indicator to the exec, to the director, whoever it may be, to say this is the current status of this particular issue. So what we actually got out of that, here's an example of, we've got VC on one screen and we've actually got this whole image of that Confluence presentation macro and all of those key results on another screen here. It's actually enabled us to have consistency across all of our engineering teams. It's helped tremendously with visibility. You know, the consistency alone is a huge improvement, but the visibility is, I'd say, what's really valuable. No more do people have to search through emails, go and find a different Google Doc, whatever. They get into Confluence, they type goals for team name, they pull that up, there's one page where they've got all the information, and they can see the current status of that. And so we're using this in every meeting now with every team within engineering, and it's been a huge win. So if you have any questions, please reach out to me. I'm happy to chat about it, share workflow with you, all that sort of stuff. I'll be hanging around later. Thank you very much.
So we are looking for an Atlassian support engineer, and if you know anybody, please let us know.